Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar recap today. My name is Amy Luby, and I work with the Muskingum County Community Foundation as the Resource Development Officer. I've been writing grants for about a decade now, and like many of you, I had no experience before being thrown into the deep end of grant writing. Over the last decade, I've been able to bring more than $10 million to our community through all sorts of grants, local, state, and federal. I'm a lifelong resident of Muskingum County, and I'm passionate about shaping the future of Appalachia through nonprofit advancement. And that's a large part of my role at MCCF is helping nonprofits in lots of ways, including finding grant funding. And so today we're going to talk about how to unlock funding at all levels, local, state, and federal grants. On today's agenda, we are going to cover understanding the landscape of funding, finding local funders, how to discover state funders, navigating federal opportunities, how to do your own funder research, and then we had Q&A when I presented this live, but if you do have questions, feel free to shoot us an email at info@mccf.org, and we can help get those questions answered for you. All right, so let's talk about understanding the funding landscape. First off, let's just in case you're grant writer 101 here, let's define what is a grant. Well, Oxford defines a grant as a sum of money given by a government or another organization for a particular purpose. A step further, you might think of grants as non-repayable funds awarded for a specific purpose. A lot of times, grants are a sum of money given to an agency to address a problem or a need in the community. They can also be a tool for social investment and change. It's an opportunity to partner with an organization. And if you're leading a nonprofit, it's a great way to accomplish your mission. So the importance of alignment when it comes to finding funders that make sense for you in the line of work that you're doing, we call that alignment, and it's really important when it comes to grants. Successful grant seeking hinges on finding funders whose mission and priorities closely match your project. So I would recommend find your passion, find your project, and then begin looking for grants. You really don't want to sort of back into a grant opportunity that's going to force you to maybe change the way you're delivering services or change the folks that you are serving just to meet that funder's priorities. You want to make sure that you are searching for funding that leads to winning proposals, because otherwise, you're investing your time and energy and resources into writing grants that probably aren't going to be funded if they're not a good fit with that funder's priorities. So making sure that what they want to fund aligns with what you want to do, that is very, very important when you're looking for funders. There are a few key differences between funding levels, primarily where they focus their dollars and the characteristics of the funding. So local funders, oftentimes that's going to be groups or organizations that want to support community development, the arts, culture, or social services in a very specific geographic area. So think about cities, counties, or regions. For example, community foundations like the Muskingum County Community Foundation. There might be local businesses that have philanthropic arms. Sometimes communities get to enjoy municipal government grants for neighborhood improvement projects. And oftentimes with local funders, you're going to find those are smaller award amounts, but they have a very strong emphasis on local impact. State funders, their focus is obviously going to be statewide, broader statewide initiatives in areas like education, health, environment, and economic development. So some examples of that might be state government agencies like the Ohio Arts Council, the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, or state-level foundations. These characteristically are larger award amounts than local grants, And again, they're focusing on statewide priorities. And so sometimes that can shift depending on legislative priorities, governor priorities. So you just kind of want to keep a bead on what's happening from a statewide political landscape, because that may align with what the work you're doing at your nonprofit. And then lastly, there are federal funders. Obviously, their focus will be national priorities across a wide range of sectors, including research, infrastructure, health, and social welfare. And you'll look for these type of grants from federal agencies like the National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, maybe the Department of Housing and Urban Development. These are characteristically the largest award amounts. They are highly competitive, and they have very stringent and sometimes lengthy application processes. So let's dive into local grant funding. If you are just getting started with grant writing, this is a great place to start, get your feet wet, learn from local funders about what it takes to put together a competitive and winning proposal. And we're going to talk about 4 local funder buckets today. And I have some examples for each of those. So first, let's start with community and private foundations. Community foundations are public charities that pool resources from individuals, families, and organizations to address challenges and create positive change in a very specific geographic region. So when you think about the Muskingum County Community Foundation, that's what we're doing. So it's kind of surprising to some people. We are a public charity. We're a 501c3. And we pull resources from within the community, whether that be individual donors, corporate donors, family foundations, and we use those dollars to address challenges or things that maybe could be unexpected that happen in our county. In this specific instance, we are a county-wide funder. Community and private foundations often are wanting to serve very specific geographic regions. And so to find those, a lot of times it's great just to do a simple online search, Google search for whatever your city or county name is, and then community foundation. You can also check out the Council on Foundations website. That's another great resource to find local funders, private foundations. Council on Foundations is a really robust website that can help you do some of that. Local business and corporations. A lot of times corporate entities set aside dollars for philanthropic giving because they have certain corporate social responsibility goals or strategic initiatives that they're trying to reach. And so philanthropic giving might be one way that they do that. To find those local businesses that offer grants or sponsorships, again, checking out community involvement in a Google search with certain company names attached to that, or foundation, you can search that. Local business directories like your Chamber of Commerce may have, those would really be able to point you to some of those corporations that may be interested in supporting your organization and the work you're doing. I would suggest researching the largest employers in your geographic area and what they're interested in supporting. A lot of times their website will list out what those community support initiatives are, but I would start there and see where your search takes you. Local government, so when you're thinking about municipal or county government funders, a lot of times those are going to be very specific to projects, whether it's an infrastructure improvement, a social service improvement. You can check these by finding out what your official government websites are, attending local council meetings, and of course, contacting the relevant departments just to understand what funding opportunities may be available. And then surprisingly, just like community foundations are nonprofit entities, there are also other local nonprofit organizations that offer funding. So some of these larger nonprofits may have sub-granting programs or funding initiatives for smaller organizations within their service area. Immediately, one example that comes to mind would be the United Way. In our region, that's the United Way of Muskingum, Perry, and Morgan. They actually have a very robust grant program that happens every spring of each year, But again, you'll want to understand what are the things, what are their priorities that they have in terms of funding, and then does that align with or match some of the services you're providing? Strategies for identifying these opportunities might be networking within the local nonprofit sector, checking the websites of prominent local nonprofits, and keeping an eye on local media. Understanding who's being funded by who through press releases and news releases is a really great way to understand what funders are out there as well. State funders. So there are a couple of areas to find state funders that include finding each of those state government agencies that would kind of oversee or be the umbrella over the services that you're providing. So each state has numerous agencies that offer grants related to their specific mandates. So that might be education, health, the environment, or the arts. And a really great way to find those would be if you're lucky enough, like we are here in Ohio, there's a state government website, and I have a link for it right here, https grantsohio.gov. And when you click there, you can find grants, funding opportunities, or the individual agency pages. For example, the Ohio Department of Health, the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. And those will give you a really quick list of what agency makes sense for you to be aligned with to search for those funding opportunities. And then in Ohio, we are lucky that we have the state grant directory. It's a centralized directory, a quick search. You can find that the Ohio Grants Partnership, grantsohio.gov, and use that resource to search lots of different ways. You can filter the information that they have on there. But any state agency funding opportunity should be listed on that website. I would also encourage you to sign up for updates from the relevant state agencies that, are relevant or pursuant to the work that you're doing. Sign up for their newsletters and mailing lists. That's a great way to stay on top of funding opportunities that might be available to you. State level foundations, like we mentioned earlier, they are operating statewide. They have broader focus areas. One great way to look for these agencies would be using search terms in Google, like Ohio State Foundations, foundations in Ohio, concentrated on education, or whatever your field of interest would be. There are also resources like the Foundation Center. It's now called Candid, but there's a really great, robust online database that they offer that allows you to filter by state and look for opportunities that way. In our region, I would really encourage you to check out the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio. If you're in the education space, another great statewide opportunity would be the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation. But like I said, you can Google search those or head over to Candid, do a state level search, and all of those Ohio funders should pop up for you. Lastly, one thing I don't want to overlook is the regional development organizations. Some states have these because they're going to offer grants for economic development or specific sector initiatives. In our region, we are a part of Appalachian Ohio, and so we do have Appalachian Regional Commission offices within our service area that can really help you, especially if you're thinking about, like I said, economic development, infrastructure, or special specific sector initiatives. For us, it's Omega. They're based out of Cambridge, Ohio, but we also rely on Buckeye Hills. They sometimes cross over with some of the service areas that we're usually working with in our region of the state. Lastly, let's talk about federal grant opportunities. Grants.gov is the one single place where you're going to go to find these federal grant opportunities. I will say at the time of this recording in 2025, it's a little tough right now. The federal landscape is very different than it was just a few years ago. A lot of our area in Appalachian, Ohio was experiencing once in a generation amount of federal funding. And that has been very widely disrupted. So you can see here, EPA, USDA, EDA, Department of Labor, or the Appalachian Regional Commission, they've all had project dollars paused or terminated within the last year. And so at the time of this recording, it's just sort of hit or miss if you're going to find federal funding opportunities that are available and open to you. But like I mentioned, you do want to check out grants.gov. That's the primary source for finding and applying for federal grants. There are lots of ways to use that site. It has very robust search functionality, so you can use keywords, funding agency filters, eligibility criteria to search for relevant grants. Grant opportunity numbers, or GONs, is also something that you might want to make yourself familiar with. Once you understand that the GON, or grant opportunity number, for a specific opportunity that you're interested in, keep track of that number, and that makes it really easy for you to search and get the latest and greatest on the status of that opportunity. Also, there are subscription options on grants.gov where you can subscribe and get email notifications whenever there are new opportunities that might be a good fit for you. And lastly, we could just talk briefly about some of the specific federal agencies. I would encourage all of you to find out what key federal agencies are commonly offering grants in the sector that you are doing work in. For example, if you're doing health research, make yourself really familiar with and known to the National Institutes of Health website. If you're doing work in education, make sure that you are engaged with the U.S. Department of Ed, the DOE website. I would encourage all of you that are listening to explore those websites directly for program information. You might even find a program officer's contact information. You could introduce yourself to them and just kind of build a relationship with the funder that way. Just like local and state funders, federal funders definitely have key priorities that often are going to align with national priorities and initiatives. So staying informed about those priorities and the local politics or national politics of the day, that's crucial. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about funder research and how to do some of this deeper dive research beyond a Google search on your own. And one of my favorite ways to do that is with the 990, which is an IRS form that nonprofits are required to submit and file depending on their financial information. But most nonprofits are going to submit 990s, and that's a tax form filed by charitable organizations within the U.S. Internal Revenue Service that provide the public with financial information about a nonprofit organization. So where can you find 990s? You can go to the IRS website, irs.gov, and do an IRS lookup of those organizations if you have the funder names. You can also search by geographic area. Another great resource would be candid.org, and where you can do a lot of that same geographic searching, county, state, zip, all those sort of search filters. One thing that the 990 can help you do is understand, did this funder award grants in the previous year? And a lot of times that's found in part 1 of the 990, summary line 13. And so you can see here, line 13, grants in similar amounts. So this organization, which happens to be the Muskingum County Community Foundation, paid out in grants 1,776,715 in the year 2021. And so that, I will tell you, that line moves from year to year when they update the 990 form. So sometimes it might not be line 13, but just know that you can look for, what you're looking for is grants and similar amounts paid. That will tell you how much they paid out. And then in subsequent pages of the 990, you can get even more detail in understanding who did they pay out. And that can help you understand, do they tend to award grants to specific regions or specific organizations? How diverse is their portfolio of grant making? And many times the 990 will give you information on who or how to contact the information to contact the organization so you can get that information around their grant funding cycle. And there are two links here. One is to irs.gov, where you can search for those tax exempt organizations, or the link to candid.org. If you are new to Candid and want some help in how to search, we have another video here on our YouTube channel that lays out how to use Candid to do a 990 lookup. Also, when you're doing funder research, be specific. You don't want to just look for grants in a Google search. That's going to be way too broad. You're going to get a lot of information and noise that you have to cut through to get what you're really looking for. So think about what those specific keywords might be related to your project or your organization's focus. Network is another great opportunity there. Talk to your colleagues, your mentors, other organizations that have received grants. They may have valuable insights that could help you understand how to work with that funder, or whether you might be a good fit, what their funding opportunities look like. Reviewing past awards, like I said, on the 990, or sometimes even on the funder's website. They'll be very open and transparent about who they funded. So look at the list of past grant recipients to understand what types of projects the funder typically supports, and again, what that geographic region looks like. And lastly, I would suggest building relationships. If the funder is offering any sort of a webinar or a workshop or information session about a specific funding opportunity, by all means, please attend that. Get to know program officers in a very respectful and professional manner. It never hurts to introduce yourself and make yourself known with those funding program officers. And lastly, if you're stuck and you're in Muskingum County, reach out to me. That's what we're here for. We can help organizations with prospecting at any time. So give us a call or stop by the website if you are stuck and need some help. And that concludes webinar 1 of 3. There will be 3 in this series, but this is 1 of 3 around unlocking funding. I would encourage you to check out our other videos here on our YouTube channel. And here's my contact information. If you do get stuck, or you just want to, ask some opinions of someone that's done some grant writing before, by all means, please connect with me. My phone number and email address are shown here on the screen. All right, take care. Best of luck in your search for funding opportunities, and we'll see you in the next video.